Hey guys, today I wanted to kind of make a video. I realized the other day, actually it was this morning, just kidding, it seems like forever ago, I was updating a bunch of my medical records. I have a wallet card that I have, and it's actually a USB medical record card that I can take anywhere and doctors can upload it. In case of emergency, in case I'm out and I do something, like if I pass out or something when I'm out, if they have to take me to a hospital, especially if it's not one that knows me, then all my information is right there. Or all my really important information, like my medicines and my diagnoses and stuff. But I realized today that I have more diagnoses than I actually initially realized that I had. And I don't know why I haven't really, like, I know I have these diagnoses, but I usually don't look at them all in a list, and so today I actually updated it all on one list, and it blew my mind that I actually have 12 different diagnoses, possibly 13. We're still not sure about the 13th, but yeah, and I don't really think I've actually ever mentioned most of these on my channel. So today I just wanted to make a video about my different diagnoses and what they are, because some of them seem like they would be the exact same thing, but there's something different. So yeah, go figure, right? So my first diagnosis, okay, these are not in order by any means, but this is the first one that really I got diagnosed with in 2006, and everything's been diagnosed since then. But the first one is vestibular dysfunction. Essentially what that is I have a problem balancing. And I mean, who knew that was a real diagnosis? But it really is. It got to the point where I couldn't even sit up. Because I have problems finding the center of my mass, essentially. If that makes any sense. I don't really know how to explain it, but I get off balance really easily. If I have to stand on both feet. If I put one foot with a little more of my weight, I start tipping that way. I can't stop it. So it makes it really hard. I fall off balance quite often. So that was my first diagnosis. I've also been diagnosed with migraines, which I should have seen coming since childhood, since my mom has them as well. I've been diagnosed with POTS, which most of us know is the postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome. And I want to point this out because my next diagnosis is similar to this, but with the POTS, you have the low blood pressure standing, but your heart rate increases. And you don't always have to pass out to have POTS. I think a lot of people get that confused, but you do not have to. Which brings me into my fourth diagnosis, that is neurally mediated syncope, or it's also known as neurocardiogenic syncope. With that, the individuals almost always faint, and that's where I get my fainting from most of the time. And essentially what happens is, if you're standing up, or it can happen while you're sitting, which I have passed out while sitting. That's actually how I got my license taken away. But your blood pressure drops, your heart rate drops, and you pass out. That's kind of why the doctors kind of explained it. The doctors explained it to me, I should say, more as my body just kind of falls asleep on itself. My heart rate can be like really fast and then drops really low. But that's actually what causes me to pass out, because everything just kind of shuts down. And that's where the neurally mediated syncope comes in, where with the POTS, you can have a lower heart rate, but your heart rate increases when you stand up. Was it 30 beats or something like that for criteria? So yeah, those are different, and you can have both of them. I remember a doctor once told me that you could have one or the other, and then my electrophysiologist said, no, you can have both. So I have both. Which also causes me to have, they say I have Tachy-Brady syndrome, which is my 5th diagnosis. 5th, maybe I should say 5 over here, right? Tachy-Brady syndrome is a subsection or subcategory of sick sinus syndrome, where the SA node, that is your natural pacemaker in your heart, doesn't function correctly. And it causes your heart rate to get really fast and really slow, and mine alternates between. And I go into abnormal rhythms. Some we have decided can be, they can be, oh man, guys. Some that can be named, we'll just say that, some that can be named and some cannot. So, for instance, I go into SVT, or supraventricular tachycardia, where the top of my heart's beating faster, essentially, than the bottom at times. Or, well, the bottom beats just as fast, but the top just starts beating faster. And then I also go into rhythms that the doctors can't decide what they are, other than they're just not normal. So, there. My 6th and 7th diagnoses kind of go hand in hand for the most part. I have chronic hypokalemia, which is chronic low potassium, and chronic hypomagnesemia, which is chronic low magnesium. We're not entirely sure what's causing those. They could be malabsorption. They could be my body just uses more. We thought at first it was diet, but even eating more of it doesn't help, and supplementing it's not really helping either with oral supplements. I'm on pretty high doses for both of those. But we're not entirely sure what's causing those. It can be a wide array of things that we're not sure of yet. My 8th diagnosis is TMJ, which is temporomandibular joint disorder. Basically, it's where your muscle, like right in here, your temporal and your jaw muscles, they get inflamed, or the joint itself can get inflamed. And it is very painful, and I've actually had it where my jaw has completely locked up, and it is not fun. I'm not allowed to chew gum or anything like that. Well, I'm not supposed to. I still do, and then I pay for it, because it essentially makes it hurt to eat, to talk, to open your mouth. Yeah, it's not so fun. I don't recommend it, but that's what I get for chewing gum for as long as I did. My 9th diagnosis is reactive hypoglycemia, and that is very interesting, I think. I was talking to one of my friends about this the other day, and her mom said, well, if she's reactive hypoglycemia, it's the beginning of diabetes. And I talked to my doctor, and he said that's not true. So we'll see. I have no idea. But essentially what it is a significant drop in your blood sugar within 4 hours of eating. And it's usually if you eat something high in carbs, high in sugars, or something else that triggers it. But if you eat a big meal, and it's basically your blood sugar just drops too rapidly afterwards, because your body releases too much insulin. And it's not, people who have diabetes are not generally, diagnosed with this. So, yeah. I think the last time I had like a severe attack that I know of, it was at the hospital, and I just got really sick, and so one of the nurses checked my blood sugar, and that was probably about 2 hours after my blood sugar was like 48, and I was like, I just don't feel so good. It's not fun, and so you have to eat smaller meals. My 10th diagnosis is Raynaud's disease. This is actually a new one. I just got diagnosed with this a few months ago. And although I've been complaining about it for like 3 years and people just kept going, whatever. But it's a rare blood vessel disease. Even though it's not really that rare because a lot of people seem to be having it. But it is basically where there's just not enough blood. It happens mostly in your fingers and your toes or your feet or your hands and your nose. But it's where there's not enough blood getting to the skin surface. And basically your vessels are constricting due to a trigger. It can be stress, it can be cold induced, which mine's mostly cold induced because if I'm somewhere warm, I don't have this problem. But if I'm somewhere that I get cold really easily, or if I'm in the grocery store trying to get something out of the freezer section, it triggers it. But it's interesting because your hands just feel cold, and my hands have felt cold now forever. And I was actually diagnosed while working at the hospital one day because my hands turned blue, or my fingers turned blue. And one of the doctors saw that, and I was like, I've only been complaining about it forever. So yeah. And see, I also have my 11th year-round allergies. I'm allergic to almost everything. It seems like I had an allergy test, and I think of 75 things they tested, I was allergic to 72. It wasn't very fun, to say the least. My 12th diagnosis and my final official diagnosis is PLMD, or periodic limb movement disorder. And I'm going to have a disclaimer, this is not restless leg syndrome, guys. The difference between this and restless leg is voluntary. And it happens when the person's awake and asleep. Now with PLMD, which is what I have, an individual involuntarily, so you have no control over this, moves while you're asleep. And it happens before you hit REM cycle. So as long as you're not in REM cycle, you're doing this. And essentially it's jerking type motions or cramping. And they can be very subtle or they can be very bad. And I've had this since, gosh, I was a kid. I was diagnosed with this also in 2006. And the doctor kind of explained it to me as like, think of someone who has like jerking seizures. And that's pretty much what you're doing. It's every 20 to 40 seconds, and it happens in cycles for 30 minutes to an hour minimum, and it can happen for as long as until you hit a REM cycle. So yeah, it's not fun, and there's not too much you can do about it. They're not entirely sure what has caused mine, but it doesn't bother me. I can still sleep. I have no recollection of me doing it at all. The only thing I do is the next day I'm really tired. And that's really how I knew something wasn't right. And that's how the doctors knew something wasn't right. It's because I was always tired. And that's how, after a sleep study, that's what we came up with. So yeah, and then my 13th unofficial questionable diagnosis is RA, or rheumatoid arthritis. We're not entirely sure. My tests have come back positive for it, but I'm not. At times I have symptoms, but at times I don't. So we're not entirely sure. It's a possible diagnosis right now, but we're not sure. So we'll see. But yeah, those are my diagnoses, and that took me forever. Yeah. I didn't realize I had so many, but I just wanted to share. If anyone has any questions about any of them, feel free to message me or write a comment or whatever. I'm very open to discussing them. So yeah, I hope everyone is doing well, and I will talk to y'all later. Bye.